From the Citizens Bank studio, welcome to the Ricky Matthews Show. I hope you're having a great day as we continue to celebrate all the amazing people across the great state of Mississippi who are working so hard in the trenches to make this such a great place to live, work, and play. I've got something to share with you from Lane Kiffin before we get to the guest today. And it's something that he actually posted on Twitter yesterday. And I like to follow Lane because he's got a super positive attitude about things, and he never loses appreciation for all of the people who helped him get to where he is, and he says it often. But here's what he posted. He actually shared a quote. I'll get to the quote in a second. But he said, "Just want to thank everyone who helped me along my journey. I appreciate all of you, and I'm so grateful. Have an amazing Tuesday, and whatever you're going to, and whatever you're going through, number one, you are strong. Number two, it will pass." And he put in parentheses, but just doesn't feel like it right now. He's been there. He understands what it's like to be the target. And here's the quote that he shared from Jack Canfield. "Happy Tuesday. Decide what you want. Believe you can have it. Believe you deserve it. And believe it's possible for you." I totally agree with that. If I go back and think about the times in my life where there might have been challenges that ultimately led me to, change careers along the way and do all kinds of stuff that was quite risky in the moment, is that I listened to a lot of really, really important people along the way, both mentors and people like Norman Vincent Peale and Zig Ziglar and others, who taught me that, I was the only limitation to me. And I really sort of embodied that. And I continue to embody that today because I believe the more we learn, the more we better learn how much we don't know, that life's a journey of discovery. And the more we learn, the more humble we better be. Yeah, as a publisher often said that the older you get, the more you realize how much you really, really, really don't know. And you forget a bunch, as you can imagine. So I love to be on this journey of constant learning, and that's one of my keys to success, and has been for many, many years, to the extent that I've been able to find success in my life. Hey, listen, Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith is going to join me tomorrow. And I'm looking forward to chatting with her about Washington, D.C. and what it's like in a Trump administration and all the things she feels so strongly about. She stood with Trump when, and in some points, it wasn't necessarily the cool thing to do, but she's never backed off. It's certainly more the cool thing to do these days, I can assure you. If those who had doubts are having less doubts these days as they watch this thing unfold. But I'm looking forward to spending some time with Cindy, and hope you'll join me for that conversation. And now I'm really looking forward to this next conversation. My friend Grant Callen, who's been on the show before, he's the founder and CEO of Empower Mississippi. We've had some terrific conversations along the way, and I look forward to catching up with Grant today. Without any further ado, Grant, how you doing?
Ricky, I am honored to be here. And, we were just talking, the snow is melted and the puddles are here. It's raining, or has been raining up in Jackson. So I guess it's just a typical January now.
I have to tell you, man, last week was a winter wonderland in coastal Mississippi. We've never seen anything like that before. I was here in 1963 when it snowed, and I remember my dad teaching me how to build a snowman. It's funny, I never forgot that. And then I'm teaching my grandkids how to do that, each of them building their own, all four of them building their own snowman. But it was, there's just something about snow that excites the soul. And, it's cool when it's here, but it's okay when it's gone, because it does kind of change things temporarily. You can't get around like you normally can, but you're a central to northern Mississippi guy. You know that already.
Well, the world kind of stops. As rare as it snows in Mississippi, the world just stops. And my kids were very disappointed that they were watching the radar very closely to see if Madison would get any snow. And unfortunately, we didn't. We didn't get it when North Mississippi got it maybe 2 weeks ago. And we certainly didn't get it when South Mississippi got it last week. So they're rooting for one more good chance this year before the winter gets away. But we'll see. But no, it's just magical when it snows in Mississippi, and it makes us adults act like little kids.
That's awesome. Listen, as we have discussed before, you're a sixth generation Mississippian. You grew up in Laurel, and you had the opportunity back in 2014 to create Empower Mississippi. And you, at the time, you said it's a solution center. It's going to be tackling some of Mississippi's biggest challenges. When you started Empower Mississippi, did you ever, in your wildest imagination, think that it would be 2025 and just still be trucking along, really embracing some really important issues for this state?
I really didn't. I had a small vision for what we could do, and I'm so thankful for those early people that, you talk about mentors, people who invested financially, people who mentored me, people who took a chance on this little nonprofit startup. And, for the first 6 months, it was I was the only full-time staff, and we had 3 board members, and we were kind of trying to figure it out. And we just every year added more and grew and built the vision. And, we started with just education policy. That was our one policy focus. And we've since added 2 other pillars to our work. So the mission has never changed. And the mission is we want to create a Mississippi where everyone can rise. And it shouldn't matter what part of the state you live in or what your parents do for a living or whether they were educated or not. We really want this state to be opportunity rich so that everybody can climb. And we know that the best way to create that kind of an opportunity rich environment is not top-down government mandates and government solutions and, bigger government programs. It's really about creating a path for people to climb themselves and giving them the tools to get a great education. That's our first pillar. Find meaningful work. That's our second pillar. And stay out of the justice system. That's our third pillar. But we recognize if people make bad decisions and they end up behind bars, we got to have a pathway for people to rebuild their life when they come out. So, yeah, we started really small, and now we are a statewide organization with, I think we're at 9 board members and 10 full-time staff, another 5 part-time staff, $2.5 million annual budget, and the impact continues to grow. And I'm just blessed to get to continue to lead this great organization.
Well, Grant, you heard me talk about I have the opportunity to visit tomorrow with Cindy Hyde-Smith, and I'm really looking forward to chatting with her because I want to talk to her about the changing media landscape, about what is it like to be in Washington today. And one of the things I'm going to talk to her about, and one of the things I would just mention to you, if you go back and look your time at the Witherspoon Fellowship in Washington, D.C., your time, working on public policy and all the things you've done along the way has been critical to understanding the layers of government and politics and policy and people and all the layers and layers that exist between Washington and the state of Mississippi, a place like the state of Mississippi, and what it takes to enact change, what it takes to get good policy moving forward, and so on. And I used to say as a publisher of newspapers that the average person will never be able to fully get their head around it. What I would say that the average publisher couldn't get their head around it. I mean, Grant Callen can't get your head completely around it because it's so complex. But what I'm seeing and what I believe is happening is the average American today is probably getting a lesson on the layers, via Donald Trump, unlike any education they could have ever gotten about, how certain entities and certain special interests control this and control that, and the role of lobbyists and how complex it is, and in some respects, how corrupt it is. But at the end of the day, the average person is actually engaged in the process today more than they've ever been engaged before. It's not out of sight, out of mind anymore. And even for people like me who might have had some angst about Trump, not his policies, but some angst about him, I didn't fully comprehend for too long a period of time. I get it today, but I didn't fully appreciate for too long. By the way, being a conservative, being a publisher of newspapers as a conservative, which was kind of rare in a lot of respects. But what I didn't fully appreciate that what kind of person it was going to take to climb that hill and to conquer the issues he needed to conquer, the kind of personality that was necessary. I mean, what he went through and the resilience that he has displayed and his focus on the issues that are important to him and important to a lot of Americans, what that has shown us is that it has taken, it will take a very unique individual to cut through all of that. And I appreciate that today. I didn't for a long period of time, but I absolutely do get that today. When I come back on the other side, I'm actually curious about how in your world, this changing awareness of all these layers and people are more aware of the layers today than they've ever been before, how that actually might help you going forward. We'll continue our conversation with Grant Callen from Empower, Mississippi when we get back. Welcome back to the Ricky Matthews Show from the Citizens Bank Studio. Hope you're having a great day, and thanks for joining us. We're visiting with my friend Grant Callen, who's the founder and CEO of Empower Mississippi. And you may remember from our last conversation, big proponent of school choice. We're going to get there before this conversation is over. But I thought, with the national political situation the way that it is today, and the amount of average, I would say the average person is more engaged in the political process today than maybe ever in history. And what we're getting is an awareness of how complicated everything is. And Trump and his unique ability to communicate has helped people see things they didn't before really understand. And they understand it better today. And how is this going to help an organization like Empower Mississippi and all the work that you've done through your career to understand these layers? But what do you observe when you see what's happening right now, Grant?
Well, there's a couple of things that I think are really interesting that you're hitting on. One of them is you talk about being a publisher. So it used to be there were gatekeepers in the media that really interpreted the world around us for those people that didn't have a platform. And if you were just an average citizen who maybe wanted to have a voice or wanted to get involved, there wasn't a lot you could do. You could write a letter to your congressman, maybe you could make a phone call, or you could, write a letter to the editor, but then you still depended on that gatekeeper to publish it. Well, the internet, as you know, changed all of that. And so it gave everyone with a microphone or a keyboard the ability to be a blogger, a YouTube person, an influencer. The media is who can even hardly define what the media is because so many people have been a part of it. And there's some, I think, pros and cons to that. I mean, the pros outweigh the cons. The pros are, it's sort of democratized the country in a way so that anybody can raise their voice and be involved in the political process. Now, the downside, which I think is at times can be harmful, is anybody can spew whatever they think, whether it's factual, whether it's kind or not, and there aren't those gatekeepers. So you end up having more and more people that are now customizing their source of information to only people they agree with. And for a lot of people, if you're far right, you're only listening to people you agree with, and you're only watching media and talk radio with you agree with. If you're far left, you're only listening to people you agree with. And so sometimes that means we're not talking to each other anymore, and we're not getting a shared set of facts about the world like we used to when everybody sat down and watched Walter Cronkite in the evening. But one of the things that I've enjoyed so much about our work, we're nonpartisan, and the issues we work on are, while I'm a Ronald Reagan lifelong conservative, believe in free markets, limited government, I believe the people can, opportunity has to come from the bottom up. I don't think Republicans have all the great ideas. I think there are great ideas on both sides of the aisle, and I get to work with people on the left and the right to try and pass good policy. And, just last night, we had a legislative dinner with about 10 or 12 lawmakers, and it was pretty evenly split between Democrats and Republicans, black and white. And last night we were talking about criminal justice reform, and we find there are allies on both sides of the aisle. So the world is changing, but I think the need for people to work with all people of goodwill to accomplish good things has never been greater.
No, I agree. What's interesting, not only are people understanding the layers as a result of watching the situation unfold, the Trump administration unfold, but they're doing it because they're participating and being part of the media. I like the way that Elon Musk often says on X that we are the media now.
That's right.
And that's so true. And it's actually been true for quite a while, to be honest with you. I don't like to, I was, as you pointed out, it's hard to define mainstream media. It's hard to define media. And even the definition of mainstream has changed dramatically. So when I think about CNN and MSNBC and CBS and ABC and NBC and so on, when I think of them, I don't think of them as being mainstream. I think of them being more establishment, because what's driving them typically is very much a liberal agenda, and that wasn't something that became clear during the social media era. That's something that was evolving through the cable news era, and the cable news becoming what it was, because they had good news, but they also had time they had to fill, and they did it with talking heads. And so and
it's interesting on that point. I have heard more members of the left media complaining about how social media has drawn a lot of these people away, and I would say it's almost the opposite. In some cases, the media got so left, they got so detached from ordinary people that they ran their audience away. And so they started, we have a lot of other people started different alternative media because there was no home for them on the left. So some of them, they did it themselves.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's very true that did happen. And I would say getting more educated and beginning to understand, wait a minute, there is another side. Let me hear that other side. What is that all about? They were controlling. The gatekeepers, as you pointed out, were controlling the message, and they controlled the message for quite a long time. But then if you think about mainstream media today, whereas like Fox and CNN and others like that would have been referred to as mainstream media at one point, mainstream media now is organizations like Fox, but it's also podcasts like Joe Rogan and others like him. And you're beginning to see a complete shift of all of that. And what's interesting about that is that there's a lean toward conservative values more than we've seen in a very long time. And the reason why is because the gatekeepers were able to suppress conservative thought. That's just the reality of the situation. Right. And so if you fast forward all of those changes in media, and then you come to this particular past presidential race, you see a Republican win, and you see a Senate, and you see a House. Albeit the numbers are close. The reality is we have the executive branch, and we have both houses of Congress. And that's what results when you are able to put all the information out there and let people choose for themselves. Listen, democracy is messy, Grant. You know that better than most. But, go ahead.
100%. And I think, for people who watched in 2016 thought maybe it was a bit of a fluke that, Trump pulled it off and wound up in the White House. Well, he's now dominated the political world for what are we coming? This will be 12 years by the end of his term. And you cannot argue that what just happened was a fluke. Whatever you think of him, it's one of the most extraordinary political rebounds I've ever seen. And he came in with more of a mandate this time than we've seen. And you're right. It's affecting the media climate. It's affecting corporate America. You're seeing social media, the Mark Zuckerberg and others changing the way they do things. And I think a lot of that is long overdue and much needed.
It is long overdue. And then you watch the MSNBCs and the CNNs of the world, watch what Mark Zuckerberg did, doing away with the extreme gatekeepers. And they're going crazy. They feel themselves losing control. And look, I was looking at some of the most recent numbers from CNN, for example, compared to Fox. CNN's numbers are absolutely terrible. And then you can understand why they're moving more to a different platform, and they're going to they're they've got these new goals that they're going to do a lot more within their app, et cetera. So it remains to be seen whether they can be successful or not. They have a revenue goal of $1 billion in a relatively short period of time. And me having come from digital media world, I still can't for the life of me understand where all that revenue is going to come from. But the situation has changed, and people are more engaged in the process. And they didn't listen, the bottom line, we were being gaslit. And we're tired of being gaslit. And the average American didn't understand what that term even meant, but they know now what it means. When you think about the border and what was happening at the border, Fox for so long was the only one singing that tune. And the rest were just trying to normalize it and say, no, we don't have a problem. Well, the average American said, gosh, Trump talks about common sense, but the reality is the average American is saying it is common sense. You cannot open the border in the way that it's been opened up and not have tremendous problems result from it. They're tired of that. They want the information. Let me sort through it. I don't care if there's misinformation or propaganda or what. I'm going to sort through it. I don't want someone else sorting through it, because the people who were sorting through it before, those gatekeepers, were holding important information back from me, and they're sick of it. And we're seeing a massive change in America as a result of that.
Oh, I think you're right. And I think a lot of that is really good. I hope this is a golden age of free speech. But I think it's incumbent. It just means there is a higher responsibility on us, the American people, because we have such access, to be careful what we watch and do our own research. And you can't just take everything you read on the internet as truth. Do the research and make sure you're actually putting good quality content in your head.
One more point I'll make about that, and then we'll get to the business at hand and talk about education and how this administration is going to really unleash some important conversations in America about the best approaches. We'll continue our conversation with Grant Callen when we come back on the other side. Welcome back to the Ricky Matthews Show from the Citizen Bank Studio. We're visiting with Grant Callen, who's the founder and CEO of Empower Mississippi. And during the break, we were just chatting with one another about, if you're a conservative, you might view the conversation we just had from that prism, and if you're a liberal, you might view it from a liberal prism. But in fact, what you saw just then, what you heard just then, were two guys who are political and media observers having a conversation about the situation in America today. I mean, it's a fact-based discussion. And one other thing I'll add to it is this, and I've had deep conversations about this as a former digital media CEO. I understand well how this works. But if you look at the algorithms of social media companies, and this is something I think Elon is bringing more awareness of, and that is, and it really goes to your point, it has to do with the echo chambers, that when you are involved in a specific conversation, two things will happen. You'll get fed more information like that, but also you might even get fed some different information that will cause you to get hyper engaged. Because the bottom line is that social media companies make more money when we're engaged. They actually make more money when we're fighting with one another. And that's a sad reality of their algorithms. And I hope that what we're going to see is a different approach to the algorithms, where it can be a little bit more balance coming into our news feeds. I think that's terribly important. I like what X has done using AI to read what's happening in terms of the conversations that are happening on the internet and then sum them up as news items. I really like what they're doing there.
Yeah, and Twitter, X, I still call it Twitter, but it's the place I go to for news. It's the thing I read more than anywhere else, because it everybody is there. But I agree completely. It's a very clear, transparent platform where I can read my feed, and I know if somebody I follow, if they tweet, it's going to be in my feed. And then if I want to read, there's a little tab you can click on. It'll show you other things they recommend, and that's where the algorithm comes in. And it's all kinds of stuff that I might have missed from yesterday or the day before. But if I want to know real time, what are the people I follow tweeting, I have access to that, and nobody stands between me and that. That's a great thing. And if I get where I'm opening it and I find myself getting angry, or I find myself getting worked up, I can look at who I'm following and go, you know what? This is not helping my life to follow this person. I'm going to unfollow, and I clean up my timeline because I don't want to put that in my head if it's not helping me.
Hey, Grant, I do that. I do that almost every day. I would say I did it almost every day for a period of time, but the more you do it, the less you have to do it at the end of the day, because you're beginning to really zero in on those you really want to follow.
It's like timeline hygiene.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great way to say it. But listen, the reality is, I think we are the media now. Let's just take the terrorist attack in New Orleans, for example. Whereas before, when I was publisher of the TimesPicayuNola.com, we would have sent a team of photographers and reporters there and done the best we could to cover that. But we would probably not be on site. We'd be on the periphery and talking to officials and maybe some witnesses if we can get hold of them. The way it works now is, man, you got people with smartphones in the moment, videoing the car as it passes, or the truck as it passes by. The whole way media works today is just dramatically changed. And look, I don't want to take one thing away from the important role that newspapers and other media play as it relates to the First Amendment. That's simply to do objective reporting of the situation. There is a watchdog role that we've got to stay focused on. But, honestly, some of the people you follow and some of the people I follow are actually performing that role. But it's just a different form of media. But they're bringing attention to things we need to hear about. It's a little messier, but it doesn't have the gatekeepers attached to it, and it doesn't have a slant attached to it. And we can sort of sort through that. And, when Facebook does away with fact checkers, and they add this element, this community element. Boys, those who have been able to control the agenda for so many years, like MSNBC and CNN and ABC and CBS and NBC and so on, they're mad. They're really, really mad because they don't want us to have access to it in that way. And final thoughts on that before we shift gears?
Well, I think part of the reason they're mad is most of the mainstream media truly thought Trump was about to lose. And again, this is not a partisan saying this. I'm just saying empirically, you watched what's going on. They were shocked. And I think they were genuinely shocked that he won with such resounding. I mean, it was he won every battleground state. And I think the reason they were so shocked is because they were so out of touch with ordinary people. And their audience had shrunk so much that ordinary people weren't listening to them. And if they were listening to them, they didn't believe them. So ordinary people are listening to your show and Rogan and various, just hundreds and thousands of other platforms to get their information. And you're right. It's changed the world we live in.
Well, listen, you and I have had deep conversations about this, but school choice is a really important issue. It's one that Mississippi will continue to focus on. But now we're having a national conversation about it because under the Trump administration, education is going to change dramatically, I would expect. So what do you see on the national level? And then how do you see, remind people, too, who may not have heard us discuss this before, why school choice is so important. But what are you seeing on the state level as it relates to that?
Yeah. So on the national level, it really started under COVID. COVID just dramatically disrupted the education system. And most of it was really harmful for kids. We had, states just did lockdown and shut their public schools for months and months. Thankfully, Mississippi had a very light touch on the shutdown, and we were back up and running pretty soon. But still, across the country, parents got a real window into what was being taught and what wasn't working. And there has been a mass exodus of parents and families from the traditional public school system, even in Mississippi. And in fact, I'd say especially in Mississippi, which is a bit surprising. Mississippi saw 6% of our public school students leave in COVID. That's the largest percentage in the nation of any state, lost 6% during COVID. And there's been a kind of groundswell of families that are going, well, let's.
And they didn't come back.
And they have not come back. That's exactly right. They left and they have not come back. And there's been a groundswell of parents interested in homeschooling, interested in private education, interested in different public school options, charters, magnets. And For us, the goal is we're agnostic about type. We don't believe one type is better than another. We just know parents know their kids best, and parents need to have the tools to match their kid with a setting where that child can flourish, that child can be prepared for life. And so for people who have money, they've always had school choice. People with money have always been able to move to a community because of their great school system. That's school choice. Or they've been able to afford private school tuition or Catholic school tuition. That's school choice. But if you don't have money, you're just stuck with kind of the public school lottery. What happened to be a public school in your community? Is it good or not? And so what has changed is a lot of people across the country have said, we're done with this system. We want to empower parents. Trump has been very vocal about that, but not just him, particularly governors across the country. We now have 12 states that have universal private choice education where you can use public dollars to choose a private school, and most of those states already had some kind of a public choice. That's incredible. In fact, we are surrounded by states that have strong, robust choice. Arkansas, Louisiana, Alabama, all have choice, including universal private choice. And I'll tell you, Mississippi is just scratching the surface. But I think we're starting to head down that path and follow some of our neighbors.
And you know what? What's interesting is you look at the machine that drives public education, and they said the sky will fall if you give choice, and the sky has not fallen where choice has been given, has it?
It's not. In fact, Florida, who has had choice more than any other state, they have more students in choice. And I'll tell you a stat. So 48% of the children in Florida, so that's about half the kids, are today in a school that's not the one they're zoned for. And I said it like that because it's not that they're all in private school. 80+% are still in public school, but they're in a different public school than their neighborhood public school. So parents are shopping around. They're finding a school that might have a dyslexia program, or they're finding a school that might have a theater program they're interested in. And kids are thriving in that setting. And for the last 2 years, U.S. News and World Report has said Florida has the best public education system in the nation, and they have more kids in choice than anywhere else. So everybody said the sky was going to fall, and for 25 years they've been saying it in Florida, and Florida they've only seen their public education system flourish under a choice system, and I'm confident that would happen in Mississippi if we will ever invest in school choice.
When we come back, we'll do a final segment with my friend Grant Callen from Empower Mississippi, and we'll put a nice bow on why this is really, really important to the future of Mississippi. We'll see you after this. Welcome back to the Ricky Matthews Show from the Citizens Bank Studio. We have Grant Callen with us, who is the founder and CEO of Empower Mississippi, and we're talking about school choice. Listen, the last time we talked, Grant, we've made some strides. The grade level reading goals that we set were really important, and I mean we've achieved some terrific goals related to that. But I think, as I said on the last show, there's more work to be done. And very specifically, I said, improving education in Mississippi is Mississippi's ticket to prosperity. Most experts will tell us expanded access to high-quality education will not only expand economic opportunity for Mississippians, but it will also do more to strengthen the overall state economy than anything else Mississippi can do. When you look at it within that context, and given that we are so focused on, man, if you think about Governor Reeves, if he's going to have a legacy, he's going to be an economic development governor, because he believes, and I believe with him, that the quickest way for Mississippi to move forward and improve its rankings is to get higher paid jobs in the state. And we're doing a great job of that. But the role that education plays in that, man, it's integral. It is integrated into that. And we just got to stay focused on that, don't we?
It is. And it is so important. And it's always important for me to emphasize, it's not that we don't already have great world-class schools in Mississippi. We do. And many communities have great public schools. We've got great private schools. We've got great charter schools. The challenge is they're not accessible to everyone. And they're they're limited in geographic pockets, and you have to have some kind of financial means to buy into some of our best educational settings, whether that's public or private, because you can either afford to buy an expensive home in a community that has a great public school system, or you can afford private school tuition. So I'm so encouraged that lawmakers in Mississippi are really starting to lead on this. And I'll tell you, particularly our speaker, Jason White, came in and said this was going to be a critical priority of his. And you see that. He started last year with leading on a new funding formula that would allocate money to students. Now, they can't take that money with them. It's not portable, but that was a good first step. And this year you see the House and the Senate have already introduced a number of bills that would expand school choice. And there are really three types of school choice we're highly focused on. And we think these are the three types that really give parents a tool to match their kid with a better setting. The first is public school choice, choosing a different public school, maybe in a neighboring community, if the one you're zoned for is not a good fit for your child. The second type is charter schools. Charters are independent public schools. Mississippi has 10 charters across the state, but with nearly 500,000 kids in the state, 10 charters, that's very small. So we need to expand that. And then private choice. That would let parents use public dollars to attend a private school. That is very limited. And currently in Mississippi, only about 600 or 700 kids with special needs have access to public dollars to attend a private school. And when you compare that to the states around us, if you live in a border community, you have tremendous options right across the state line in Alabama, Arkansas, or Louisiana that you just don't have in Mississippi. So I am hopeful that lawmakers are going to expand all three this year. There's a lot of momentum, but I would say we need parents who believe in this, who want more options. We need parents involved. This is not going to happen because Empower Mississippi is walking the halls of the Capitol. It's going to happen when parents talk to their lawmaker and they explain how important this would be to their families. And there are ways you can, if you go to our website, empowerms.org, we have a tool in our action center that lets you look up who your lawmaker is. You just put your address in. It'll tell you who your lawmaker is and lets you send them an email directly from our website. So a great tool for people who want to get involved.
Listen, I remember a really powerful editorial board meeting I had with Governor Haley Barbour. He had just returned, he had just visited a school in a poor area that had great leadership and great test scores. And the point that he wanted to make was, don't think that bad schools are directly related to poor communities or rich communities, that there are good schools and bad schools all over the place. And what I would say is there are pockets of educational excellence all over the place. And what we want to do through school choice is give parents the opportunity to be able to find those pockets of excellence.
Well said.
And so it's the least, what we're trying to do is find the least amount of friction to get there. And honestly, even in places where a school might be excellent, they might be highly rated, it might be a blue ribbon school, because kids are unique. One child or two child or three children they're not thriving in that school. And so even in your best highly rated districts, parents need choice because one size doesn't fit all. And choice is not something we should think of as a punishment for schools and districts that aren't performing. It's just an asset to families. And it's going to be an asset to Mississippi. And let me tell you, I can see it in your voice. I can see it in your face. There's a light at the end of this tunnel, and Mississippi's headed toward it. God bless you, my friend. Hey, it's been a pleasure to catch up with you, Grant.
This was my pleasure. Thank you for having me, Ricky.
You bet. This has been Grant Callen from Empower Mississippi. Have a great day, and we will see you tomorrow.